Hi. Basically, we are asking you to donate some money so that we can go over to Uganda to capture some stories. The idea being that these stories will help to shape the Ugandan clinical psychology training community and the sort of services that can be offered there, and will also help us in the UK to think about the services we offer. What we're talking about when we're talking about these stories, I thought I'd share one with you. So this is a story of someone called Hope. She asked me to share her story actually widely. I heard it when I was in Uganda last time in January, when I was lucky enough to sit in on a conversation that she was having with a social worker there. And it was it was in Ancholi, so I didn't understand the spoken language, but I could understand the kind of the feelings and the connection and the communication in the room. And at the end, they were kind enough to translate it into English as well, so I kind of had the words as well. So here we go. Basically, Hope was at about 3, and the Lord's Resistance Army came to where she lived. So they'd been going to different villages and towns and just taking people away to become part of their army and to fight, to be used as soldiers and sex slaves and children as well. So in Hope's family, her grandfather was too old to be useful, so he was beaten to death. Her parents were taken because they could be used within the army, and Hope was too young to be useful, so she couldn't be used for sex or for a soldier, and so she was just thrown into the bush and left. So an incredibly traumatic early event for her. She managed to find people to care for her, kind of people within extended family and community. She kind of drew on this incredible resilience, and she went to school as well. And then much later, after the war had ended, and people returning from the Lord's Resistance Army into the communities that had been so traumatised by the attacks and the horrific sort of violence and events that had happened. People were trying to return to those communities knowing they had been part of it. It's just horrendous. Well, her mum and dad came back, but they couldn't be together anymore. Because, just thinking about what they'd been through, gosh. But they brought with them more children, so there were more children to care for. And Hope decided at that point when they came back that actually she was going to stop schooling because she wanted to care for these younger children. So she did. She decided she was going to choose to fall in love, because that way she might be able to find somebody who could support her and the children. So she found a man, fell in love, and became pregnant. And then the man left, and Hope was left with a baby growing inside her and these children to look after. And as I kind of heard this, because I didn't understand the words, but I could just feel the sort of the emotion within the room was clearly distress. And there was such containment and connection. There was long pauses and looking out the window together, and the social worker was sort of scribbling on the desk with a pen, and at one moment she sort of leant over and very gently stroked Hope's finger with a pen, which turned out to be the moment when she'd sort of said that she was pregnant. And this kind of just watching how her Hope sort of moved, how her story was held and heard, and her distress was heard and contained, and she got to the end and just seemed in so much better place than when she'd started. That was without me knowing the words. And I kind of afterwards I said to her, what helps? And she said, well, my name helps, as in her name, Hope. And she helps, talking about the social worker. So she listens and she understands, and she's here. She's always here. And it just really struck me. I thought, how often are we able to do that in clinical psychology services in the UK? How often does that get done in clinical psychology services in Uganda, or really any services anywhere? It was incredible kind of watching that. And I heard stories of that sort of connection, community, really listening to meaning, and stories where people kind of loved each other, really. And I heard those kind of in connection with lots of the peer support work that's happening in the country. And that's kind of, I guess, what we want to do. We want to enable those stories to be heard by the clinical psychology training community in Uganda, with the idea that that will shape services in a really positive way, kind of hanging on to what works, where the strength and the resilience is in communities already. How can clinical psychology build on that? And for us to bring that back to the UK as well and think about how we want to shape our services, what can we learn from those stories as well? So incredibly inspirational, I found it. I've already shared these stories with some people that has kind of really influenced their practice as well. And a very good reason, I think, for you to go and donate on the crowdfunder page. So please do. And thank you very much for listening.